Hello, Rob Roselli coming to you once again on Facebook, Clean TV, website boxofsunglasses.com, email info@boxofsunglasses.com, and Twitter @RobRoselli. The last several weeks, we've been discussing Robert Christian, the Rosicrucians, the Knights Templar, etc., etc. So as not to rehash all information, those videos, and I'm working on getting a YouTube channel up and running. Those videos will be posted, which will lay the groundwork for tonight's focus, which will be the Un-American Genocidal Complex. And apologies again if it's backwards, but you'll get the picture. Which we're going to discuss in depth the next couple of shows. And really what the book is, it's a snapshot of the, quote, conspiracy, as the, quote, conspiracy is really surrounding us. It permeates our society itself. And as we're seeing, not that I want to go too deeply into this scam we call it presidential election, or elections in general, in this once great nation, but as we're seeing in real time, the, quote, conspiracy has permeated just about every nook and cranny of our once great nation. It's really, it's everywhere. It can't be stopped. It was never meant to be stopped. But now what's happening is it's just bubbling over and manifesting itself in real time and on the surface, to the point where the conspirators can't hide it anymore, nor necessarily do they want to hide it. As I've been saying, mentioning again and again ad nauseum on the show, is that our Satanist, Satan-worshipping, criminal Illuminati overlords don't necessarily try to hide the, quote, conspiracy, but in fact stick it in our face with their figurative middle fingers in the air, saying we control you, really in a mocking fashion. In a similar way to this multi-named scam, Pharaoh Barry. We'll call him Pharaoh Barry. Barry, Obama, Sobarka, Sotero, Hussein, whatever this multi-named freak, whatever his real name is, that occupies the White House, in the same condescending kind of fashion that guy talks to the rest of us out here in the imbecile majority, or as Queen Jezebel calls us, deplorable people, is the arrogance that's really emblematic of the conspirators themselves. Okay, and their useful idiot, Ivy League underlings, Northeastern Ivy League underlings, which we know more commonly as progressives or liberals, but that's not even in the realm of tonight's discussion. Well, it is, but I don't want to go off on that tangent right now. Now, as an example of that, here's the copy, or the front cover of my first book. Now, you notice this capitalist pyramid, which we've discussed at length on the past several shows. Again, those will be posted on my YouTube channel, and I'll get you more information on that. But 13 rows, okay, with the 14th row being the all-seeing eye, the all-seeing illuminated eye of the Greek god Apollo, which equates to the Egyptian god Osiris, which just so happens to be associated with the number 14. Okay, so when you read about the king of the bottomless pit, Apollyon, in Revelation chapter 9, Apollo and On, which is another synonym for Osiris, things really start to fit together quite nicely. And of course, Jesus Christ himself is associated with the number 14, but I don't want to go off on that tangent right now. But you can see that again, that's another example of the, quote, conspiracy, how far up the chain it really goes. Okay, and it's probably a good time. I mean, I like to every show to emphasize. I like to try and keep things as simple as possible, as difficult as it is when describing the, quote, conspiracy. And there are three basic principles that are key to understanding the show and following it. And if you're not willing to accept those or believe those, then there's really nothing I can do for you, except try and pray for your soul, because there's not a lot of time left, and I don't know exactly what that means, but the way things are going, unfortunately, the rapid economic demise of this whore of Babylon, the formerly great United States, seems like it's upon us. Okay, but anyway, the first of the three principles is the Bible is the infallible Word of God. Okay, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's a take all or leave all proposition. Okay, you can't have negotiations. There's no meeting in the middle ground. And if you are the ultimate truth, if you're advertising ultimate truth, that's the way it needs to be. Okay, you can't negotiate with it. And that's just it. You know, John chapter 14, you know, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one cometh unto the Father but by me. Or John chapter 8, I am the true light. Okay, there's no deviating that. No matter what this scam Catholic Church and their Satan Pope Francis, okay, you know, and every pope who stares at the, you know, the obelisk, the sun, you know, emblematic of the sun god, you know, Osiris, you know, the big obelisk in St. Peter's Square. So that guy's going to tell us, you know, how to be Christians. They're right. But so no matter what the Satan worshiping Catholic Church wants us to believe, there is no negotiating. Okay, there's no theistic evolution. It's all a bunch of crap. Right, evolution's you know, the biggest scientific scam in history. Okay, it makes Al Gore, the global warming climate change crowd, look like Al Einstein. Okay, and perhaps we'll get into that a little bit tonight with a discussion on the Un-American Genocidal Complex. As a matter of fact, we will get into it because that's a key to the whole thing. Okay, evolution. But anyway, principle number 2 is Israel. Okay, is absolutely not God's chosen people. Okay, they had that title in the Old Testament, but they kept giving it up. And I simply, for the life of me, I cannot understand how so many so-called theologians and, you know, guys and gals with doctorates in theology and all these seminaries and all this other nonsense can sit there and say with a serious face that, you know, we must worship Israel and we must follow Israel and all this other nonsense. I can't believe that these people have read the Bible outside of God's promise to Abraham back there in the book of Genesis, and they've skipped all the way to Revelation. Essentially is what they've done. So to sit there and think that, you know, Israel is God's chosen people is a complete farce. It makes a complete mockery of the Bible. All right. I don't even know where to begin with that one. We can do whole shows, and perhaps we'll go through sections of the Bible, you know, to the Old Testament prophets, and, you know, the Apostle Paul and what he has to say about the Jews and the religious Jews and all this sort of thing. And that's not to say that I'm not being anti-Israel, and I'm not one of these, you know, Zionists, the Jews are responsible for everything kind of people either. You know, I respect the nation of Israel and I respect what they're doing. And there is a small section in Ezekiel 36, okay, that does account for the regathering of Israel in 1948. Okay, but God did it for his purposes, for his holy name, and he says that very explicitly in Ezekiel 36, and that's it. Okay, so the reestablishment of Israel in 1948 is a sign. But it's got nothing to do with Israel. Okay, so these boobs, we'll just call them boobs for now and be generous, that, you know, let's say, you know, walk around with their Jewish stars with their, you know, their hexagram, which is really an occult satanic symbol, as I've explained incessantly on the last several shows. You know, they get on that Trinity Broadcasting Network with their stupid, you know, occult hexagram called the Star of David. Don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's just that simple, okay? And there's, again, I'm not, there's plenty of the whole Bible. That's really the point of I have to say 90% of the Bible, especially the Old Testament. So it's unfathomable to me, again, that so many first so-called Christians can follow that line of thinking, and then so many suckers that sit in these mega churches that sit there and listen to these people can just not pick up their Bibles and read the stuff for themselves. This isn't the Middle Ages, okay? The Catholic Church isn't around burning people at the stake or pulling them apart, literally limb from limb, literally pulling people apart for reading the Bible. Okay, those days are over. So people can read the Bible for themselves, and don't take my word for it. Just pick an Old Testament book. I don't know. Pick up the book of Jeremiah and read the first 10 chapters. Anyway. And then that segues into the third biblical principle, which is there is no doubt whatsoever, and we're seeing that happening in current events, by the way, and we should do a show on that in the not too distant future, is that the United States is the mystery Babylon of Revelation, okay? And what is happening right now, unfortunately, is, I predicted, or I'm not going to say I shouldn't take any credit for it, but I presented the proper interpretation of Revelation 17 and 18 several years ago, and the scenario that's painted out in there is exactly what is unfolding throughout the world as we speak. Today being, Tuesday, September 13th, 2016. Okay, it's exactly what's happening. Okay, in other words, the United States is a whore. The beast represents the world. The whore rides the beast. Okay, but the beast hates the whore and will burn her with fire in 1 hour. And I'm just picking out phrases. And it says the beast will hate the whore. That's exactly what's happening. The world is getting to the point where it hates the United States. It hates the United States for its hypocrisy, its fake war on terror. Okay, this whole weapons of mass destruction scam. Okay, skull and bones, George Bush going in and invading Iraq under false pretenses, and now it's coming out that the Saudis are in the middle of 9/11, which is not even conspiracy theory anymore. I mean, you have the United States Congress trying to pass a bill indicating Saudi involvement in 9/11. But I don't want to go off on that right now. But the point is that the world is looking at this. Even the imbecile United States press to sell out less than disgusting septic tank floatables, pieces of crap. The United States media, national media in this country, even they can't hide it anymore, okay? The fact that 9/11 was a scam, the war on terror is a scam, the Iraq war was a scam, okay? The United States deporting its debt, it's printing these Federal Reserve notes, these debt instruments we call dollars all over the world. And people have finally figured out, and big people like China and Russia have finally figured out what a scam we've been running in this nation for the past 100 years with this Federal Reserve money printing nonsense, this African, South American, Banana Republic-like money printing nonsense that this country has become. These other nations are onto the scam, okay? And it's the worst kept secret probably in world history is the whole economic collapse that's happening as we speak, that's being papered over literally with the money printing or the quantitative easing of the Federal Reserve System. But again, getting back to the point of the world and my interpretation of Mystery Babylon and Revelation 17 and 18, what's happening is the world hates this country, okay? And I can't say I blame them, all right? I know I'm not going to make the curvy couch of Fox News for not rah-rahing, cheering, and jumping up and down for the military-industrial complex, but we're ready to start World War III over Syria and the Ukraine. Okay, sovereign nations, Libya, another one. Sovereign nations we have no business getting involved in. Sovereign nations that we've made worse. Not that these places were anything great or perfect, but that made things worse. And by the way, and we're going to get into this here in a minute, and another part of the problem is who the hell are we with our radical abortionists, and as symbolized by this half-white scam artist and his sidekick Queen Jezebel, the rapidly deteriorating Queen Jezebel, with their post-birth abortion / partial birth abortion radical agenda, where babies are taken to the point of coming out of the womb and their brains are sucked out with a catheter. Okay, or in some cases where when abortions are botched and the babies are born alive, they're killed after birth. Okay, this happens tens of thousands of times a year. Okay, So who the hell are we to moralize to anybody? We're going to get into that much deeper. Again, that's why it's important, this discussion tonight on the Un-American Genocidal Complex. So I guess it segues into the discussion, the whole discussion on this book. Okay, but the point is, Revelation 17:18. Okay, so forget the stupid third temple. I mean, for those of you that have been reading, these clowns on the Trinity Broadcasting Network and the comic book Antichrist and the whatever nonsense they're talking about. Okay, the 666, the chip implants, and all this other garbage. Revelation has been going on since the beginning of what we call world history. Okay, most of the language is symbolic. I know a lot of people disagree with that, but this is why you end up with nonsense. This is why you end up with people like Hal Lindsey saying, we have to wait around for the third temple to be rebuilt in Jerusalem before anything happens. While at the same time, we're being set up for World War III and a surprise nuclear attack and an economic collapse of biblical proportions. All this is happening as we speak, and all that's being ignored because idiots on a Trinity Broadcasting Network are telling everybody to watch Israel and wait for a third temple, and I guess a guy with horns or somebody to occupy that third temple and say he's God, and start cattle branding people with 666 or implanting them with microchips or some kind of stupidity. The image of the beast is here. I believe he resides in the White House and goes by the name of Robert Christian, and that's something else we've discussed at length on the past several shows, and I don't want to get into right now. But we'll revisit Robert Christian when we discuss the Georgia Guidestones here in a few minutes. But anyway, the point is, what I'm saying is, forget all that, okay? As far as Revelation goes, you're not going to have two witnesses. You're not going to have Moses and Elijah running around Jerusalem zapping people with flamethrowers or whatever nonsense they're trying to tell you. And that's another one that cracks me up is, these people say, well, Elijah has to come back as one of the two witnesses when Jesus clearly states in Matthew 17 that Elijah already came. Okay? And if you go back and you read the languages, Elijah has already come, and it becomes obvious to the disciples 2,000 years ago. He's talking about John the Baptist. So how these clowns can say, we're going to have two witnesses running around, just like it's described in Revelation 11, and say one of them's got to be Elijah. It's just so stupid, and again, so biblically ignorant. I can't understand how it's up to me to bring this to to people's attention, whoever happens to be listening, or is going to watch this video at some point in the future. But anyway, that's basically it. Okay, and then on my website, boxofsunglasses.com. And I should probably mention this more often, is God's simple salvation plan, okay? Because at the end of the day, it really is simple, okay? And, as a matter of fact, Christianity itself is simple, okay? Anything that complicates it, like this nonsense called the Catholic Church and all that nonsense, okay, is really the work of the devil, okay? And I mean that, okay? Again, when the Pope, a man, gets up in direct violation of Matthew 23, and he's supposed to be called the Holy See or Father, and he gets in front of, 1 million people in St. Peter's Square with an Egyptian obelisk. I mean, there's nothing else to say, okay? In the whorish, the queen of heaven, okay? Another name for her is the mother of harlots in Revelation 17. Okay, if you read Jeremiah 7, for example, you can read about the Queen of Heaven and what God really thinks of her, Queen Jezebel, the modern version of which is Hillary Clinton, parentheses. But anyway, so how, people can take that seriously is beyond me. But again, it's complication. But the 2 Corinthians chapter 11, the simplicity of Christ is confused by Satan, who disguises himself and his ministers as angels of light, okay, in a similar fashion. Judas Iscariot, remember, Satan entered him, and the apostles had no idea what was going on. In similar fashion, a lot of these con men, these con artists that I'm describing, they're just ministers of righteousness, okay, but you're taking your focus off the prize, okay. You're taking a focus off John 3:16, for example, okay, again, or Matthew 23, and maybe that explains why the Catholic Church was so interested in burning people at the stake, okay, for trying to disseminate the Bible. I mean, for 1,000 years they had, Europe, most of Europe on lockdown, okay, where you couldn't read the Bible, okay. And when you read it and it explains why, then you start asking questions. Well, what the hell do we need a pope for? Especially a pope that advocates open borders. While he sits in the Vatican, behind his walls and his guards, and other religions and humanism and environmental radicalism and all sort of crap. Okay, there's nothing illustrates that what I'm saying more clearly than this current pope. Goes out in front of that Egyptian obelisk, with a stupid fish hat, symbolic of the Philistine fish god Dagon, okay, which is their version, a few steps away from their version of Osiris, who was Apollo or Apollyon in Revelation chapter 9. It's just utterly ridiculous to think. But again, just getting back to the point is that simplicity is the key here. In Matthew chapter 13, kings and philosophers and thinkers in all world history have been looking for the knowledge that I'm imparting to you, and I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically the summary of Matthew chapter 13. They ask him, why speak in parables? Because Jesus tells them, because it's for you to know, and for who I choose to know the kingdom of heaven, and not these other jokers, these world leaders, okay, of all these powerful religions, media outlets, banks, governments, etc., who have chosen the kingdom and the prince of this world. Okay, and we know who the prince of the world is. Remember in Matthew 4 and Luke 4, Satan offers the kingdoms of the world to Jesus himself, because he owns the kingdoms of the world. And that Satan, aligns with our friend Robert Christian. Okay, again, which we'll touch on that a little bit tonight, but I've touched on that, more deeply in this past several videos. And by the way, these videos are an hour to an hour and a half twice a week, and they're really very broad summaries of my website, boxofsunglasses.com. So you can read. I'm trying to cover literally, I have to say, several books, perhaps a dozen or more books of information that's posted on my website. I'm trying to cover that in 2 to 3 hours a week, and I don't want to make these. Trying to keep these things too long, because then people probably, people's attention spans or whatever tend to give way, and then we're just wasting each other's time. But that being said, again, here's the Un-American Genocidal Complex, okay? It's available on my site, boxofsunglasses.com. It's only one of 2 items that I sell. Okay, now the other item, we'll get into this in the future, is this book here called Pleased to Meet You, which is really about the son of Satan in the White House, okay, in a roundabout way, but we'll get to that in a future show. But both of those books are available, Amazon links. Okay, it's available on Amazon. There's the publisher links. I know the publisher is a little more complicated. Amazon's a little simpler, but whichever, those books are available. But I don't advertise. I don't sell survival gear. There's no commercials. I'm not associated with other websites. Okay, I'll give out names and other book titles and stuff. I have no economic interest or incentive for doing so. Just it adds information and provides information to the discussion at hand. So that being said, again, the Un-American Genocidal Complex is what we'll discuss on the next couple of shows. On the opening page is the links for it. You can get it there. But anyway, these are the Georgia Guidestones. Okay, this is the Skull and Bones logo of 322 and the United Nations. Okay, so Un-American Genocidal Complex obviously has multiple meanings. Now, un-American means that this union of these Northeastern Ivy League academic elites, these useful idiots of David Rockefeller and friends, Brzezinski and Kissinger and the rest of them, and their drive to hook us up with this place, called the United Nations. Okay, that's the United Nations. It's un-American, lowercase u, and it's un-American capital U, the United Nations. Okay, so that's obviously the meaning there. And the genocidal complex, now you have the Nazi swastika, which is really, the original was it's a Buddhist sun god symbol. Okay, because as people may know, Hitler, like our Satan worshipping overlords, was heavily into the occult. So it kind of cracks me up when the History Channel gets on and talks about Hitler and his obsession with the occult, and they skip right over the fact that dummies. Hitler was into the occult, stupid. Our Federal Reserve note, the all-seeing eye of Apollo, which is basically the equivalent of the swastika in terms of its representation of the sun god. Okay, the archetype, sun god of history. Now, archetype means universal. Okay, so in other words, the sun god, Apollo, Zeus, I want to say Jupiter. I don't know, Jupiter might have been Roman, but anyway, so the Roman, then you got the Roman sun god Jupiter or Saturn, and the Egyptian sun god Osiris, the Persian sun god Ahura Mazda. Okay, the Buddhist sun god. Okay, the Hindu sun god. All right, or Shiva. Okay, Brahma, Vishnu. Okay. Even Buddha, who is a historical figure, has been raised to the level of a sun god figure. The point is, archetype is symbolic of the sun god. Okay, so in other words, it's the same character, just in different, traveling through different cultures. But anyway, so to sit here and say that Hitler was obsessed with the occult and skipped right over this and right over this, which this isn't as popular. This is the only place you're going to hear about this, by the way, which is I call St. John's the Divine Cathedral, right here in Mystery Babylon, right next to Columbia University. Okay, and by the way, there's another link coming out, and that'll be out hopefully this week. 2 links describing the complete man of mystery, Barack Hussein Obama, or I'm going to start calling him Pharaoh Barry Obama in this modern Egypt, known as the United States. But anyway, so there you have it, the front cover, Georgia Guidestones, Skull and Bones. Okay, the Georgia Guidestones founded on March 22nd, 1980. Okay, 322. There's not a coincidence. Okay, Robert Christian, the rose plus the cross is symbolic of the 18th or 6 plus 6 plus 6 degree of Freemasonry. Remember from Revelation 13:8, it says to count or calculate the number of the beast, 603 So it's emblematic of a mathematical equation, and it's the number of a man. Okay, it's the number of Satan. And Satan is a man, per Genesis chapter 2. Cain is synonymous with Satan, as is Judas Iscariot, as is Barack Hussein Obama Subarka Pharaoh Barry, which we'll get into on a future show. But anyway, and we'll go to the back cover, and I'll just read, in the book of Ecclesiastes, God, the real one. Now remember, every culture has a sun god, okay, a false god or a Satan, we'll just call him. And emphatically states, there is nothing new under the sun. Human history is rife with man's inhumanity to man. The 21st century may be the worst yet. Now, there's more wars and more violence in the 20th century than there has been in the history of the world, more or less. Okay, of course, there's more people and technology and all that, but think about it. Okay, we had the Great War, World War I, which was brought to us by the forerunners to the Un-American Genocidal Complex. Okay, the Rothschild, Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan gang, which got World War I going, and then they sucked the United States into it, courtesy of that sellout progressive loser Princeton graduate Woodrow Wilson, who also gave us the Federal Reserve Act and its capitalist pyramid of Giza Federal Reserve Note, which I just showed you a few minutes ago. World War II, as we're going to discuss here in this snapshot of the conspiracy called the Un-American Genocidal Complex, was also brought to us by the Rothschild, J.P. Morgan / Rockefeller establishment. Okay, and as was the United Nations, and then as was pretty much every major war in the 20th century was brought to us courtesy of the Un-American Genocidal Complex. Okay, so that's very interesting. All right. I'm not saying every war, but most major wars and most communist revolutions were brought to us courtesy of the same crowd. Okay, so things are getting very interesting. Okay, already. So one of the most egregious examples of this inhumanity has been human sacrifices to Mother Earth, or the Greek Gaia, and her husband Baal, the ubiquitous sun god of history known as Lucifer and later Satan. Canaanites, Druids, Mayans, and I throw some more in there, the Philistines, okay, Moabites, and other people in the Old Testament were heavily into child sacrifice, okay, and human sacrifice and this sort of thing. And these are the foundations of the New Age movement, okay, Gaia, Earth, nature worship, okay. And they go on to say today this human sacrifice is hidden beneath a thin veneer of science called global warming, the population problem, and the complete live system. Okay, remember Obama's death care, the complete live system. And we'll get into that, in this book. Ezekiel Emanuel, Obama's very own doctor of death, came up with something called the complete live system, where people's lives, the worth of people's lives is based on their age. In other words, young children, infants, and the old, say people over 60 or 70 are considered less valuable. So, talk about incrementalism. What is that for? I mean, what does that mean? It means you can have a bunch of government bureaucrats, eugenics-minded bureaucrats who are steeped in this climate change, radical environmental, genocidal crap, deciding who lives and who dies. Okay, that's really what Obamacare is. Okay, and people laughed at Sarah Palin, she called them death panels, and say, but she was exactly correct. Okay, and as a matter of fact, we have death panels today called Planned Parenthood, which we'll get into. Okay, Planned Parenthood, formerly known as the Negro Project, because its original intent was to eliminate the Negro, and that's of course big friends of Queen Jezebel, Hillary Clinton. Okay, who ironically enough should be a victim of the complete live system. Okay, failing health, pushing 70 years old or whatever, however how old she really is. Anyway, and I say it's all controlled by they. The they. I mean, people say they would, the they, they're going to let the economy fail. They're going to take care of things. They being the federal government / this mysterious, group that's out there that's never going to let anything bad happen, like, say, an economic collapse of biblical proportions. They will always do something. What are they doing? When are they coming to help us? And all this sort of thing. But what I'm saying is the they. I'm assigning a name to the they, and I'm calling it the Un-American Genocidal Complex, and I conclude there really isn't anything new under the sun. Okay, so in other words, child sacrifice, maybe in the Old Testament they sent children into large images, metallic images of, say, Baal or Moloch, okay, and they threw the children inside these brass images and burned them to death. Okay, that's the Old Testament. Now, New Testament, modern day Mystery Babylon, America, we suck a baby's brains out with a catheter. Okay, I don't know which one is worse. But again, for the global warming climate change crowd, which we're going to get into here, that's a good thing because you're controlling the population. You're sacrificing human lives for Mother Earth or Gaia, okay, which was, by the way, the sister / wife / consort of the aforementioned sun god, Baal or Moloch or Osiris, Apollo, Jupiter, whatever you want to call them. Okay, the rose, the male, plus the cross, the female, 18th degree of Freemasonry, Rosicrucians, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So in the introduction, okay, I lay it on the line as to where I'm going with this whole book. And there is a chapter on there on AIDS, by the way. And if you think AIDS was, some disease that just popped up because some monkey bit some poor African on the butt, and he had AIDS everywhere. All right, didn't quite work out like that. I mean, although the American media, the Un-American Genocidal Complex, which never lies, it's a joke, telling us that that's what happened, and that means the complete opposite happened. All right. So before I get into that, I lay out the groundwork of the mindset and the mentality of, who would be so evil as to purposely infect hundreds of millions of people with an immune-suppressing retrovirus. Okay. But that's just the way it is. That's just, the same people that gave us Adolf Hitler. So the mindset is there. To the point of this book is the mindset is there, the precedent is there, the technology is there, and the will is there. And the liars to cover it all up are there. All right? And that's pretty much what I go off in the introduction. So in other words, when you eliminate God from society, and your leaders literally worship Satan, and they literally do with things like at Bohemian Grove. Okay, David Rockefeller and his boys every year at Bohemian Grove worshiping a 40-foot tall owl called Moloch, which I just said is another name for Baal, the Old Testament. Today, the 21st century, when these guys aren't screwing around. And I just showed you the best example of that, in that all-seeing eye of Apollo Osiris on your Federal Reserve note. This is the mentality. Okay, these are the people that would do something like this. So everything's in place for that to happen. Okay, and I just go into in a little bit of a sidebar. I mean, I don't want to be associated. I know that like Louis Farrakhan and some of his crowd are saying the same thing. Okay, but I don't get those guys either. Okay, they'll come out and say stuff that might sound outlandish. And I would agree with it, but then they, of course, the whole white devil, kill whitey kind of crap that they put out. But then I'll go out and support a guy like Barack Obama, that half-white con artist, that radical abortionist. And abortion, again, is a huge part of the Un-American Genocidal Complex, and its original intent was to eliminate black people. So, I spell out, why I want to distance myself from that whole crowd, which I don't get. Well, I guess if Satan putting the blinders on all these so-called evangelicals, why couldn't they put the blinders on those people? But anyway, I just want to make that point as far as that goes. Now, the original, and by the way, I'll get into that a little bit here, okay? This whole thing, okay, everything I'm discussing in this book and all the information, I did a research project, when I was a undergraduate student in microbiology way back in college, almost 30 years ago, on AIDS. Of course, nobody believed me at the time, and I kind of gave up on it myself. I kind of threw everything away. A lot of information I had to reacquire. Okay, but I had tons of information from medical journals, just you name it, sources coming from all directions. And these weren't conspiracy theories. They went to, like Science, Nature, okay, Scientific American, maybe. I'm just trying to think of real scientific journals that all said the same thing, okay. AIDS wasn't from a green monkey, okay, in Africa. I'm just saying from a strictly scientific standpoint, they all said this, okay. That's not, of course, what the whores and the disgusting repugnant American media was saying. It came from a green monkey in Africa, and that's the end of the story. If you just dug a little bit, and I'm not talking about any deep investigation here. I'm talking about going into the archives of the science library at my college, okay, Vanderbilt University, and just doing some basic research. And stuff wasn't hidden, okay. You can go in there and you can read and say, well, the genome, okay, and the genetics of the AIDS virus matches that of a mixture of cow, bovine, Visna virus, okay, bovine and Visna, cow and sheep viruses, okay, and there was more than one, quote, AIDS virus, okay, there were 5 different variations, and we'll get into that a little bit, later on in the book. I want to establish the groundwork first, okay, which is the Un-American Genocidal Complex, again. And let me just say this, okay, as it turns out, when you start looking at things like, other diseases, okay, experiments have been happening on the American people, the psychopathic drive for World War III, etc., which is happening right now. Okay, the desire to eliminate 90% of the world's population. Okay, AIDS is Bush League. All right, AIDS is child's play. But anyway, so, the original, there was a video called the Straker Memorandum by Dr. Robert Straker, Streckeer, and that's what really, following that video, okay, at the time it was a, video cassette VCRs, and you may still be able to get it, I don't know, but that's what really got me going, and that provided the groundwork for a lot of information, and I went and I followed, and I picked up a lot of his sources. Again, these weren't wacky, quote, wacky sources. These were mainstream medical and scientific journals that I was using as sources. And I don't have a doctorate in microbiology, by the way, and I don't consider myself, I was an above average, average to above average engineering student. Okay, and I'll just say that for the record. But the hell with, listening to the quote experts and everything else. I mean, look at the economic experts, all these imbeciles with 200 IQs, with statistics and, that these so-called Harvard Business and Chicago Business School are putting out. And the United States economy is a disaster waiting to happen. Okay. The experts that tell us, weapons of mass destruction, or the experts that tell us about evolution. So the point is, experts are all full of crap. Okay. And if you don't, if you want to just don't look at me or what I'm saying as a credible source, and I can't help that. And go watch Fox News and let these politicians keep lying to you about everything. Okay, from your own history to science to the economy to everything. All right. So anyway, the point is that the information is there, and it's not that well hidden. And I took all the information, by the way, that I had gathered, and I dropped it off at a certain senator's office by the name of Al Gore, who was a senator in Tennessee at the time. And I actually got a response from Senator Gore, okay, at the time, when I still believed, I was still naive enough to believe that the United States government was on our side. It was something to be revered and respected. Of course, at this point, I'm the complete opposite mindset. The nation of our founding fathers is long gone. It's been sucked to death. It's been sucked dry by this Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, Rothschild, military-industrial, un-American genocidal complex. But anyway, I know Al Gore has all the information that we're going to discuss in his book, because I dropped it off in his office, and I got a response from him. And I never really followed up. Okay, I never really became any kind of activist. To be honest, I kind of gave up on the whole thing. I was kind of beaten down by everybody. Okay, friends, family, whoever, classmates. For the most part, thought I was crazy, and I kind of gave in. I said, yeah. So I kind of forgot about it. Excuse me. And went my merry way. But then I circled back into becoming a full-time conspiracy kook. Then things made a lot more sense. Okay. And then I go into discussion on a pristine bullet. The point there again is just as I was saying. You have this, President John F. Kennedy. Okay, who was the last president to take on the military-industrial complex, who tried to take it on head first, was killed by the only bullet in world history that defied basic laws of physics. Okay, That's just a perfect example when I say these freaking experts that get on TV and, tell us, oh, it was Lee Harvey Oswald. It's not possible the United States government would execute its own president. Okay, we're supposed to believe that because all the quote experts told us so. All right. Anyway, so that's the point there. Now, chapter 2, I kind of get into Adolf Hitler and how he was in fact made in the United States. Okay. Now, I'm going in the order of the book here, but his financial and religious beliefs aligned with that of our Satan-worshipping overlords, okay, and their belief in an Aryan or great white race, okay. Now, I mentioned eugenics, okay, I mentioned Darwinism before. Now Darwinism, or evolution, okay, the reason, evolution is the most evil mindset or thought ever to fall upon mankind. Okay, evolution has nothing to do with science. Okay, just to go off on that tangent right now, evolution is basically, it's a facade, it's a cover, it's an attempt, a successful attempt, okay, to eviscerate God from society. Okay, and it's just as simple as that. I know a lot of people out there saying, these stupid liberals who think, little lemmings, who think they're open-minded and progressive, just getting on their hands and knees and following along with our criminal Illuminati overlords who put this crap out through the education system and the so-called scientists at these major universities. Okay, just like with global warming, if you speak out against evolution, you lose your job, you lose your funding. It's like with anything else. Okay, the control comes through the purse strings, and the purse strings lead back to the Federal Reserve System. Okay, so you can see how this is all working together. Okay, and why Jesus Christ chased the money changers out of the temple with whips. Okay, symbolic of the modern day money changers known as the Federal Reserve System. But anyway, evolution has nothing to do with science. Okay, I don't know how else to say that, and I know it's not going to be a popular statement on people out there, I know, I can tell you from experience that nothing elicits the vitriol from so-called progressives and liberals is to criticize or question evolution. And I think the more I think about it, I think it's because evolution is their God. Okay, no God is their God. Atheism is their God. But there's no science. There's no science involved. It's purely religion. And I had a series of radio debates with so-called experts and, I don't know, some history professor, some attorneys, doctor, some guy had a doctorate in physics, and a bunch of other jokers. And I made it very simple. I just asked a very simple question, trying to comport the Big Bang with Newton's laws of physics. How do you reconcile the two? Nothing to do with religion. F equals ma, for example. Whether God exists or doesn't exist. That's Newton's first law of motion. Force is equal to mass times acceleration. Okay, so does God exist? Well, who cares in that context? F equals ma. Okay, but Newton's other laws of motion. Equal and opposite reaction, and not to go off on the whole physics thing right now, but it's basic, say, high school senior / freshman college level physics stuff. Okay, and I got no answer. Okay, I got a lot of nonsense. There's 5 to 6 hours of complete nonsensical crap, but there's no science. It said, nobody said anything about God. I didn't say anything about God. But none of them had anything to say. There was nothing. In other words, if you blow something up, just like Newton's laws says, everything should go off on a linear path. The energy, the summation of the energy of those particles after the explosion equals the summation of the energy before. And they're going to go in a continuous linear motion, until such time that the energy is overcome, air resistance or whatever, and gravity, and those particles are going to come to rest. I mean, that's just common sense. We're not going into scientific explanations. It's common sense. You put an M80 inside a cardboard box or a ball. You're going to blow it up, and the pieces are going to go off in all directions, and that's it. Okay, so what's the difference between that and the Big Bang? So I just said, explain to me. What is the Big Bang? I mean, how do the planets? I mean, the planets rotate around the sun. How does that? Just explain to me. What's the math? What's the science behind that? How do you explain? Or does Newton laws not exist? I was just asking them basic scientific questions. Nothing, but I got no answer because there is no answer. Okay, so that was the point. So then you could say, well, then you're a creationist. You believe God created the universe and God isn't scientific. But see how stupid that is? See how stupid evolutionists are? How easy it is to run circles around them, even with their 200 IQs and their physics and whatever degrees. Okay, see how stupid that is? Who said anything? But it's not religion. I mean, who said anything? Okay, so I believe in a creator, but if you want to debate that, by the way, that's fine. But then we're not talking science. We're not talking Newton's laws anymore, are we? We're not talking science. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm getting at? Okay, so that's the point. That was they made my point for me. Okay, and I may have gotten a lot of insults, laughed at. No, that's great. I couldn't give less of a crap. That's fine. But the point I'm trying to make, and we'll get into this perhaps on the next show. I'm going over the hour already. Is evolution is not science. Okay, so what is evolution? Evolution equals survival of the fittest. Okay, social Darwinism. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting into Adolf Hitler territory. Now we're getting into the Un-American Genocidal Complex. Now we're getting into white people are superior to black people. Okay. Now these idiots, these jackasses, these stupid bastards, and the Black Lives Matter and all these other organizations, these George Soros white billionaire funded useful idiot morons, these college kids, white, black, and all colors, these dumb bastards. You want to talk about institutional racism? Read Charles Darwin and what your overlords really believe, you dummies. Just the subtitle of Charles Darwin's book, The Origin of Species, or the Preservation of the Favored Races and the Struggle for Life, the preservation of the favored races and the struggle for life, you idiots. It's unbelievable that people, it's institutional racism. It's supposed to be people like me. I don't know. White people are racist. In the meantime, the whole premise of evolution is that white people are superior to black people. Black people were put in zoos and carnivals in this country. They were institutionalized in sanitariums because they were considered mentally unfit. They were considered imbeciles, morons, misfits, human weeds. Okay? And they got that premise from Darwin's theory of evolution. Darwin was basically called black savages. Okay? And white American liberals put blacks in zoos as proof of evolution. And you liberal progressive idiots, you regurgitate this Darwinist crap like you're some kind of enlightened thinker. But progressive is nothing but the biggest collective group of douchebags that ever walked the earth, the American progressive. Okay, the great Michael Savage has liberalism a mental disorder. I think he's being too generous. Okay, so the point is that the American eugenics movement was founded in Darwinism, real racism, and these people really believe this stuff, and they still believe it to this day. Okay, and then out of the American Eugenics movement comes Margaret Sanger. And Margaret Sanger, big thing was Margaret Sanger, who spoke in front of the Ku Klux Klan, by the way, was a hero of the Ku Klux Klan. Well, why is that? Well, she came out and said, well, why are we euthanizing these people? Why are we wasting money on these people, on these, these two stupid, people, especially the blacks, the Negroes, as she called them? Why don't we just kill them before they're born? Okay, and she called her organization the American Birth Control League, and she had a love fest going with Adolf Hitler. Hitler was writing for her magazine, I think it was called Eugenical Review or Eugenical News. Hitler's underlings were writing articles for her, and she was corresponding with them, and, you guys, you Nazis are great, I love what you guys are doing and saying. Joseph Mengele and, the rest of them, Klaus Barbie. Okay. Now, it became, for obvious reasons, became unpopular, in the early 40s to be associated with Adolf Hitler and the American Birth Control League. So the American Birth Control League was forced to change its name to Planned Parenthood. Okay. So when Queen Jezebel, Hillary Clinton, and I'll just to tie the relevance in today in this one instance, when she gets up there and collects her Margaret Sanger Award and has the audacity to call people deplorable and racist, whatever the hell it is she's saying, that completely stone-hearted, pharaoh-like Queen Jezebel Hillary, there's nothing really that can be said, okay? But she is rooted in the Un-American Genocidal Complex, which still lives today, by the way. And I'll just jump ahead to the end of the book and pick it up again with Adolf Hitler on the next show. But the Un-American Genocidal Complex is the conglomeration of the Rockefeller, Soros, Kissinger, Brzezinski, Rothschild complex, the Federal Reserve Bank, Council on Foreign Relations, Trilaterals, Bilderberg Group. Conspiracy theorists have heard the name, but the intertwining, the interaction of those groups, which brought us Adolf Hitler, which brought us the Federal Reserve and continue to operate the Federal Reserve today, that is the Un-American Genocidal Complex, okay? And it's much more pervasive, obviously, than the Israel, stupid, whatever, Islamic Antichrist nonsense would have us believe. But anyway, Rob Roselli, Clean TV, Tuesdays and Thursdays, most Tuesdays and Thursdays, unless I got something going on, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and all these videos will be posted on my YouTube channel for future viewing. Website is boxofsunglasses.com, and you can get the Un-American Genocidal Complex. Okay, it is, including the appendix, I don't remember, just over 100 pages. Okay, should about a 2 to 3 hour read with references, by the way. I don't say anything without full bibliography, by the way, fully documented, just to tease a little bit. So when I say that, the American military-industrial complex runs experiments on us out here in the imbecile majority like guinea pigs, I have government documents that say just that, okay? Synthetic biological agents, U.S. Government Printing Office, July 1st, 1969, for instance, National Security Memorandum 200, which is one of the more popular ones with the conspiracy kooks, of course, is in here. Department of Defense Appropriations for 1970, etc., Human experimentation, an overview on Cold War era programs, which came out in September of 1994 by the United States General Accounting Office. Okay, so I have documents like that in here, bibliography, everything's in here. Okay, the Un-American Genocidal Complex, available for purchase on boxofsunglasses.com. Good night and God bless.